At DF Chase, safety is a top priority. No matter who you work for, we all need to follow the same safety rules while on the job site. In short, we want each and every one of you to go home at the end of the day in one piece. In this video, we will briefly discuss numerous important safety protocols to follow while working on site. At DF Chase, we are committed to a zero-incident job site. The purpose of this safety orientation is to inform you of our site rules, safety policies, and emergency procedures. This is not an OSHA class or job training program. It is your employer's responsibility to provide you training and equipment to safely perform any task required. If you are asked to do something that you have never done before or feel uncomfortable doing, please notify your supervisor immediately. Also, you have the right to be protected from any hazard on the job site. For example, your employer is responsible to provide hearing protection even if another trade is doing the jackhammering, or perhaps a respirator when the other trades are cutting, grinding, or sanding. Safety is a two-way street. It is our job to provide you with a safe work environment, free of recognized hazards. Your job is to work safely, follow all the rules and procedures, and immediately correct or report any recognized hazard to your supervisor or DF Chase. You may be asked to cooperate or assist in any incident or accident investigation. Bottom line is, if you see something, say something. There will be no retaliation for reporting any recognized hazard or unsafe condition. You must attend this safety orientation before working on any DF Chase job site, sign the safety orientation acknowledgement form, and wear a safety orientation sticker on your hard hat. If you are taking this safety orientation online, you will be issued a certificate of completion or a user card at the end of this program. Show your certificate at the DF Chase field office in exchange for your safety orientation hard hat sticker. Notify DF Chase if you lose your sticker or change hard hats to request a replacement. You will not be required to take this orientation again. You must also attend and sign in at any DF Chase safety meetings and any toolbox talks, job hazard analysis, or pre-task safety meetings held by your employer. Supervisors must ensure that all work is planned out and coordinated in advance between DF Chase, contractors, and workers. They must ensure all safety rules are observed and enforced. Submit digital copies of weekly job site safety inspection forms, JHAs, and toolbox talks each week to the DF Chase superintendent or on-site safety manager. Supervisors must ensure all new workers attend safety orientation before working at the job site and provide a translator if necessary. They must maintain a current list of employees and their hard hat safety sticker numbers. Supervisors must also ensure that all workers are properly trained and issued all required equipment and PPE to safely perform their tasks, and ensure that all operators and competent persons have valid certifications available upon request. Contractors are responsible to designate competent persons to DF Chase in writing for all scopes as required by OSHA and DF Chase. Competent persons will perform all required work, inspections, and submit signed documentation. A competent person is defined as one who is capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards in the surroundings or working conditions which are unsanitary, hazardous, or dangerous to employees, and has authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them or stop work if necessary. All work and tasks will be formally planned prior to work commencing to identify hazards associated with each work step and appropriate actions to correct the hazards. This should be filled out in the field where the work is to be performed. Each worker is required to participate in this process. Keep a written record signed by all workers and submit digital copies to DF Chase. Toolbox talks will be completed once a week or more frequently if needed. The safety topics that are selected are applicable to specific hazards on the job. If you have a question about safety, this is the perfect time to bring it up. As a subcontractor, documentation of your weekly toolbox talks should be sent to the DF Chase Safety Coordinator on site. In the event of a fire emergency, an air horn will sound 3 long blasts to signal evacuation to the muster point to meet your supervisor for a head count and further instructions. This is usually located in front of the DF Chase field office or near the construction entrance. In the event of a tornado emergency, an air horn will sound 6 long blasts to signal evacuation to a shelter-in-place muster point. After evacuation, do not leave the muster point or return to the work areas unless instructed to do so. An air horn will sound 1 long blast to signal all clear, safe to return to work. A copy of our emergency action plan, including emergency contact information and evacuation maps, will be posted in front of the superintendent's field office. Make sure you review this information before entering the job site. It is the responsibility of each subcontractor to provide medical attention to their employees. Each contractor is required to have their own first aid kit and a competent person on site qualified to provide first aid treatment or CPR if needed. It is your responsibility to have your supervisor identify in advance who the qualified person on site is for the first aid and CPR emergencies. If an ambulance is needed, DF Chase must be immediately notified. If an ambulance is not needed, it is the responsibility of the subcontractor to transport the injured employee to the medical treatment facility of their own choosing. DF Chase must be immediately notified when an injury occurs on site, regardless of severity. DF Chase also maintains an emergency first aid kit and, in some cases, an automated external defibrillator in the superintendent's field office. Due to the variance in state policies where DF Chase projects are located, there is no official policy for COVID-19 on DF Chase job sites. However, workers are encouraged to minimize the risk of exposure by adhering to CDC recommendations, including maintaining social distancing, wearing a mask, washing hands frequently, avoiding touching your face, and staying home if experiencing symptoms, like fever, headache, loss of taste, or coughing, for example. Any confirmed reports of positive COVID-19 testing or quarantine must be reported to DF Chase immediately. Proper fall protection is required at all times at elevations above 6 feet on this job site. There is a zero-tolerance policy regarding the lack of fall arrest equipment. If anyone is found not using fall arrest equipment in a required area, they will be removed from the job site. This important topic will be covered in more detail later in this video. Use designated eating areas, no littering, no glass containers. Water coolers or drinking containers must be cleaned, tape-sealed, dated, and initialed daily. No sharing cups. Empty all trash cans into metal dumpsters at the end of each shift. This is a harassment-free workplace. Harassment is defined as behavior which offends other individuals on the basis of sex, race, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, or other protected basis, and undermines the individual's morale, interferes with working relationships, and undercuts the individual's ability to work effectively. Respect others the way you want to be respected. If you feel that you have experienced harassment, immediately contact your supervisor. All AM/FM radios, iPods, tape players, CD players, or other media player types are prohibited. Smoking will be permitted in designated areas. No smoking will be allowed in the building once sheetrock begins. No smoking will be allowed near any flammable storage areas or fuel sources. No smoking in the portalets. No smoking, littering, clogging, vandalizing, or abusing portalets in any way. Anyone caught using containers or buckets in lieu of designated restrooms will be removed from the project. Our drug and alcohol policy on site is pretty simple. They're not allowed at any time. It is a violation of our workplace policy to use, possess, sell, trade, and/or offer for sale alcohol, illegal drugs, or intoxicants. Firearms, weapons, including replicas, toy weapons, or otherwise any material type are prohibited on site. Park only in employee-designated parking areas. Do not block any egress lanes or fire hydrants. Speed limit is 10 miles per hour. Beep horn at blind spots. There will be no temporary blocking or occupying of any street, egress lane, or entry gate without prior approval of DF Chase. When it becomes necessary to temporarily close a public street or alley, a written traffic control plan will be required. Workers assigned as flagmen will be trained as recommended in the Manual Uniform of Traffic Control Devices and State Department of Transportation. Up-to-date daily heavy equipment inspections must be maintained by each contractor. Only trained and authorized personnel shall operate heavy equipment. Use outriggers and spotters as needed. Always wear a seatbelt. For those acts or behaviors not considered immediately dangerous to life or health, the following will apply. First notification, verbal warning. This safety orientation is considered your first notification and verbal warning. Second notification, written warning, retraining, suspension, or removal from the project, a 3-day suspension. Third notification, permanent removal from the project. Behaviors or acts that may result in immediate removal from the project include failure to follow the fall protection policy, 6-foot rule, failure to follow the substance abuse policy, entering or allowing someone to enter an unprotected excavation or trench, failure to follow lockout-tagout procedures, fighting, harassment, horseplay, or practical joking, possessing a firearm or another dangerous weapon on the project, inappropriate interaction with the public, blatant disregard for safety. These will all result in immediate removal from this job site. First, we will cover workplace clothing and personal protective equipment, otherwise known as PPE. You must wear a hard hat, long pants, heavy-duty work boots with a non-skid sole, shirt with sleeves, safety vest or a high-vis shirt, and eye protection. Check your hard hat to make sure it's in good condition. If there are tears in the suspension, you may need a new one. Throughout the course of a normal workday, you may be exposed to different types of eye hazards, including flying particles, chemical splashes, sparks, and more. You need to be wearing eye protection at all times. That means safety glasses, goggles, a full face shield, or a combination of the three. There are lots of jobs that require a full face shield, and if you're cutting or welding, you'll need to have special eye protection. Hearing protection is important to protect you from noise. If it's hard to hear a person 3 feet away, you need hearing protection. There are 2 types of hearing protection, earplugs and earmuffs. In some cases, you may even need both. If you do not use hearing protection and continue to be exposed to loud noise, it can cause permanent damage to your hearing. Work gloves are often required for many types of tasks on the worksite. Heavy-duty gloves can protect you from sharp edges, abrasive surfaces, and splinters. If you're doing anything with acids, corrosives, or solvents, you really need to be wearing the right type of gloves. Do not wear any type of rings, jewelry, or loose clothing that can catch on a corner or in a piece of machinery and cause an injury. If you're wearing a chain around your neck, it needs to be under your shirt. If you have long hair, you need to make sure it is under your hard hat so you don't get caught in any revolving equipment. We have a lot of heavy equipment on site, and your high vis helps you remain visible to other workers. No matter where you are, pay attention to your surroundings. Being hit by a piece of equipment or a crane load is one of the leading causes of worksite fatalities. There may be an instance when it is necessary for you to provide assistance to a coworker and information to management as a result of an incident in the workplace. An incident can be any event that interrupts usual operations, damages property, causes bodily injury or illness, or requires first aid. When an incident happens, you should first make sure everyone is safe, then notify a supervisor immediately. Depending on the circumstances, you may also need to call 911 and provide first aid if you're trained to do so. Later, you'll be asked to fill out an incident report and help determine the best way to prevent future incidents. Make sure you have reviewed and are familiar with the emergency evacuation maps, location of the designated assembly area in the event of an evacuation, and the emergency contact information on site. This information can be found at the DF Chase job site trailer. Please ask your supervisor who you should report to in the event of an emergency. A fire prevention plan is required for all DF Chase projects and must be included in the site-specific safety plan. The purpose of the fire prevention plan is to assess and abate construction fire hazards through job site inspections and meet state and federal requirements. As the project progresses, fire hazards can change and increase. Fire extinguishers must be provided and available for each 3,000 square feet, and the travel distance to the nearest fire extinguisher must not exceed 100 feet. Fire extinguishers must be mounted on a stand, column, or wall and must not be stored on the floor. If you are cutting, welding, or doing anything with an open flame, you need to have a hot work permit. All combustible materials must be removed within the vicinity of the work. If they can't be removed, they must be covered with fire blankets. A fire extinguisher must be available and a fire watch posted while you're doing the work, and for a minimum of 30 minutes after you're finished. Portable fire extinguishers must be maintained at all fuel storage areas, as well as near all generators and mounted on all vehicles and heavy equipment. Hazard communication signs indicating flammable storage and no smoking signs shall be maintained at flammable storage areas. Do not store flammables near any stair or egress path or any level below grade. Flammable gases and liquids must be properly stored in a secured location in an approved canister. No plastic gasoline cans allowed. Flammable liquids must be contained in an approved self-closing metal canister and stored securely in a metal cabinet. Flammable gases must be stored in cylinders, strapped upright to prevent tipping and secured in a storage cage. You must separate flammable fuel types by 20 feet or a properly rated steel barrier. A wide variety of hand and power tools are used throughout your workday. If you are not familiar with the tool, do not use it until you are properly trained. Inspect tools to make sure the guards are in place, it is in good condition, and it is working properly. Also check the cord to make sure there are no cuts or nicks, and if the ground pin is missing on the plug, it needs to be taken out of service. Ground fault circuit interrupters must also be provided if you're using a temporary power source. This includes an extension cord plugged into a permanent outlet. Make sure the power tool is disconnected from the outlet before you start changing attachments or making repairs. When lifting, handling, and carrying materials, make sure to do so properly. Lift with your legs, not your back. Get help if the load is too heavy. Do not lift awkward or heavy materials alone. If in doubt, contact your supervisor or manager to get someone to help you or utilize a mechanical lifting device. When using material handling equipment, be sure you fully understand how to operate the lifting or hoisting equipment before you start. Make sure materials are stored and sealed properly. Be extra careful around completed work that has been covered. If you see something that's been damaged, report it to your supervisor. Falls are the leading cause of workplace fatalities in construction. DF Chase is dedicated to the protection of all workers from on-the-job injuries. After performing your daily job site hazard assessment, determine what fall protection method works best prior to beginning your work. The most common methods of fall protection are safety harnesses, lifelines, and lanyards. If you are working at a height of 6 feet or more, fall protection is required. All workers working in areas where they might be exposed to fall hazards do work requiring fall protection devices or use fall protection devices must not do so until they have received the proper training and have documentation. Personal fall arrest system equipment must be in good condition and inspected daily. Anchor points must be rated for 5,000 pounds. Tying off to a wire rope, perimeter cable, or other guardrails is not allowed. Horizontal lifelines must be pre-engineered. Do not tie back to your lanyard. Guardrails must be equipped with a top rail between 39 inches and 45 inches high, which is able to withstand a downward and outward force of 200 pounds. It must include a mid-rail, half the height of the top rail, able to withstand a force of 150 pounds, and a toe board to prevent tools and material from being kicked to areas below. Wire rope guardrails need high visibility flagging every 6 feet. Top rails may not deflect more than 3 inches. Guardrails must not be comprised or tampered with in any way. Any damaged, loose, or missing guardrails should be repaired or replaced immediately. If you see a damaged guardrail, let us know right away. Floor and wall holes, openings, and gaps that exceed 2 inches must be covered. Covers will support at least twice the maximum expected weight of workers, equipment, and materials. Covers must be secured to prevent accidental displacement, have full edge bearing on all 4 sides, and be marked whole. Ladders can make many tasks easier, but they are also a continual safety hazard. Only fiberglass ladders are permitted on DF Chase projects. Before use, inspect the ladder to make sure it doesn't have any split or cracked rungs. Make sure it has a sound base and side braces are locked. Don't ever stand on the top 4 rungs of an extension ladder or the top 2 rungs of a stepladder. If you use an extension ladder, it must be tied off. When climbing, use both hands. Carry small tools on a tool belt and use a rope to raise and lower heavy tools. Scaffolds can be erected, moved, or disassembled only under the supervision of a competent person. The competent person must inspect the scaffold assembly before each use to see that it is assembled correctly, that it is level and plumb, base plates are in firm contact with sills, bracing is in place and connected, platforms are fully planked, guardrails are in place, safe access is provided, that it is properly tied and/or guyed, and that there are no overhead obstructions or electric lines within 12 feet of the scaffold assembly. Only use the safe means of access provided. Do not climb bracing or frames not specifically designed for climbing. Any worker using an aerial or scissor lift, also known as mobile elevated working platforms, must be trained by a qualified person and have a valid certification card. Aerial lifts must be examined before being placed into service and inspected daily prior to use. Workers must be tied off at all times while using a mobile elevated working platform. Make sure you keep the access chain closed and the platform free of debris and clutter. Standing on the mid or top rail of the lift is prohibited. All workers operating heavy equipment must be certified to operate the machine and have documented training. Heavy equipment must be inspected and certified to be in safe and operating condition. Check the equipment at the beginning of each shift to ensure equipment and accessories are in safe operating condition. Deficiencies must be corrected and defective parts replaced before continued use. When working around cranes, it is extremely important to pay attention to your surroundings. The crane and swing radius should be clearly marked and barricaded. Do not walk under suspended loads or within the swing radius of the load. Only trained, certified, and authorized persons shall operate a crane on this project. Annual, monthly, and daily crane inspections are required. Crane operations must be planned in advance. Crane and rigging equipment load limits specified by the manufacturer shall not be exceeded. Tag lines are used to control loads, and whistles or horns are used to signal when a load is lifted. All rigging must be performed by a competent person certified in rigging operations. Always be aware of overhead hazards caused by cranes, lifts, booms, scaffolds, upper levels, roof work, and other controlled access zones. The danger of injury through electrical shock is possible whenever electrical power is present. When a person's body completes a circuit, thus connects a power source with the ground, an electrical burn or injury is imminent. Most fatal injuries result from high voltage exposure. However, people can sustain injuries from low voltage power if it has a high current flow. Authorized employees must be properly trained in lockout-tagout procedures in order to lock out or tag out equipment for service or maintenance. Electrical room doors must remain locked when unattended by a qualified electrician. Work on any energized circuit is prohibited without demonstration of absolute need and pre-planning. Dead fronts must be installed on all energized panels. All service panels and breaker boxes must be locked and properly labeled. Wiring from temporary panels must be protected from damage until it reaches 8 feet off the ground. Cords and tools must be free of damage and cuts. Electrical tape repairs to cords are not acceptable. Do not use a cord or tool that the ground prong has been removed. Only 12-gauge cords are allowed. Flat cords are not allowed. All cords will be protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter, a GFCI. Maintain flexible cords in good condition, protect from damage, water sources, and avoid creating trip hazards, and keep clear of egress paths. Keep a safe distance from electrical activities. Report all electrical shocks immediately. A competent person must be in charge of all excavations. Underground utilities must be located and marked before excavation begins. Workers are not allowed in the excavation while heavy equipment is digging. All excavations must be inspected by a competent person prior to work each day and before each shift. Trenches more than 5 feet deep must be braced, shored, or sloped back. This includes the area between the foundation wall and earth bank. Even a large foundation excavation can become a trench once we start putting in formwork or walls. Never go down into a trench unless the excavation has been properly shored, not even for a minute. Otherwise, there's the chance that the soil will cave in. There should always be a ladder or ramp within 25 feet of where you're working. A confined space is any enclosed space with limited means of entry or egress, which is not designated for continuous occupation, such as manholes, vaults, tunnels, and others. A permit-required confined space is a confined space that contains actually or potentially hazardous atmosphere, or the potential for engulfment by particulate matter or liquid. Before entering a confined space, you must evaluate the area and complete the confined space entry permit. Employees must notify the person who authorizes entry before working in confined spaces, and that person must approve the confined space entry permit as appropriate. There are materials used on construction job sites that could be hazardous to your personal safety and health if not used properly. All hazardous chemicals must be contained in OSHA-compliant containers and labeled according to GHS standards. Copies of safety data sheets, commonly known as SDSs, of the chemicals and other hazardous materials that you use on site must be kept updated and accessible to all workers on site. Signs and barricades or caution tape are used to identify and communicate many job site hazards. Controlled access zones may be required where open trenches, fall hazards, hot work, overhead work, or other hazards exist. Surround the entire work area with red danger tape to signify do not cross, yellow tape to proceed with caution, and hard barricades for high-risk areas. All overhead work will be red, barricaded, and/or have spotters to flag traffic as required. Maintain danger or caution tape at all times until the hazard is remedied. There are some tasks that require a respirator or face mask. Make sure you have the right respirator for the task. If you're not sure which respirator you need for the task, ask your supervisor or the safety coordinator on site for assistance. You should be trained, fit tested, and evaluated by a medical professional prior to using any type of respirator. Workers that perform or work in the vicinity of any of the following work tasks will be protected from exposure to silica dust by use of respirator and/or environmental controls, such as vacuums, fans, or water. Chipping, hammering, or mixing refractory-like concrete, cement, or grout. Abrasive blasting using silica sand as a blasting medium. Abrasive blasting of concrete regardless of the type of medium. Sawing, hammering, drilling, grinding, or chipping of concrete or masonry products. Demolition of concrete or masonry structures. Cutting of tile. Dry sweeping or compressed air blowing of concrete, masonry, rock, or sand dust. Make sure you understand the risks of exposure to silica and the proper respiratory protection and training required. Keep the job site fenced off or barricaded and all road entrances clearly marked so the public is protected and aware it is a construction site. Housekeeping is vital to safety on all DF Chase job sites. It is important for all workers to keep their work areas orderly and clutter-free at all times to reduce potential safety hazards. Make sure your work area is clean before you go home at the end of your shift. We now conclude our site safety orientation by reciting the safety pledge. I certify that I have participated in, acknowledge, understand, and will follow the safety rules, policies, and procedures of this job site as covered during the DF Chase safety orientation. I understand these safety rules are for my own protection, and I will follow them to protect myself, my coworkers, and the general public. I understand that I am able to review any portion of this orientation and will be given a chance to ask questions prior to working at the job site. I understand these safety rules are a condition of employment at DF Chase projects, and failure to follow safe work practices may result in disciplinary action by my employer and/or loss of site privileges. I acknowledge that I have received and have been trained in the use of personal protective equipment and agree not to perform any work that I am not trained to do. I understand and acknowledge that I am not obligated to work in any hazardous area, use defective equipment, or equipment that I have not been trained to use, work in areas that contain debris or wet slippery surfaces, uneven or unstable surfaces, or that have lack of proper illumination. If I ever believe an unsafe condition may exist, I will stop work immediately and contact my supervisor. I agree to immediately inform my supervisor and DF Chase of any hazard or unsafe condition, or any accident, injury, or incident on the job site. This has been explained to me in English and/or my own language when necessary. This concludes our safety orientation program. Print or download the certificate of completion for proof of your attendance. Show the certificate at a DF Chase job site in exchange for a site-specific hard hat sticker. The superintendent on the job site will review with you the emergency action procedures and evacuation muster points. You will also be given an opportunity to ask any questions you may have. We have covered a lot of information in a short amount of time. To put it briefly, think about what you're doing, focus on your work, ask for help when you need it, and keep an eye out for the worker next to you so you can both go home safely. Thank you for watching the DF Chase Safety Orientation video.